God's story, your life. Unfolding short stories.
About 5 years ago, I was pretty convinced I was a Christian, pretty convinced I had a decent grasp on things. I was a software engineer, but I couldn't stop drinking. I had been a really bad alcoholic for about 30 years since I was about 14. Started getting a little bit sick here and there, got pancreatitis really bad, and was diagnosed with chronic pancreatitis, acute pancreatitis. I don't know if you've ever had it or know anybody that's ever had it, but it's extremely painful. When I pancreatitis the first time, and when I was diagnosed with it being chronic, I had hit my knees that morning on a trail at Smithville Lake here in Missouri. And I was like, how can I not kick this? And I was begging God to please help me out. Well, he did, but he did it in that form instead of a different form. It wasn't like I woke up and the birds were chirping. I got extremely sick. So that was the answer to that. And it was very loud and clear to me that that's what had happened. So I did okay with that for a while, went to Texas, and then COVID hit. And a lot of people that battle addiction had a rough time with that too. So I kind of started dabbling again. I didn't have anything to do. The gym was closed, the parks were closed, everything. So I started again, not horribly, but enough. Of course, more pancreatitis attacks, and went to the hospital a couple times. But this time I had started walking by the mirror and I was dropping weight, like 10 pounds a week. And it was all muscle because I had spent a ton of time in the gym and a ton of time out running and hiking around and trying to be as healthy as possible, trying to keep myself from drinking. And they said, yeah, it's probably your pancreas. You have a little bit of a fatty liver. And, but other than that, just don't drink too much. And my daughter came to stay with me for a while down there. And we were still going through COVID. She was going through some really tough times. They had her on all kinds of antipsychotic medications and things like that. So it was just a really tough time. No excuses. Just, it was easy for me to at least have a couple just to try to lighten things up. I started getting very sick now. You get what's called ascites, and it's fluid buildup in your legs and your abdomen, and it's wildly uncomfortable. I ended up to the point where once COVID was really letting go, I was not in shape to be able to even work anymore. I couldn't tell one day to the next whether or not I was going to be able to get up. And I had been starting to read the Bible a little bit. I mean, just little tiny choppy bits here and there, not thinking about it much. Also doing what a lot of people do and thinking, why is this all happening to me? My daughter actually tried to end her life when I was down there. So it was a rough time. So I ended up having to come back up to Kansas City and stayed with a roommate and went to the hospital a couple of times. And finally, the third time, they kept me there and they told me that I was not going to last 3 months. I had gone too far. I had end stage liver disease, which stage 3 survival rate was about 6%. Within probably a month, I lost 20 pounds more. And I was down to, at that point, 123 pounds, which was about 80 total. So I looked like a skeleton, just like a yellow skeleton. Throughout all this, I had no concept of time. When you have liver disease also, it floods your brain full of toxins. And I was never afraid. I felt okay. I felt like they were wrong. And I told them this. My mom was there and my sisters, a couple of them. I have 9 of them. And the doctor asked me, can we bring your family back in here and let them know? Because they need to be ready any day for this. And I said, you can bring them back in, but you guys are wrong. And she was like, well, what do you mean we're wrong? I said, you're wrong. I'm not going to die. I'm positive of it. So I go in and out of the hospital for close to a year. Throughout this, I had contracted a deadly virus, all kinds of stuff. Liver disease is bizarre. It affects everything. But this whole time, I'm growing closer to God, and I'm not really sure how it's happening. I'm not reading the Bible. I'm not really reading anything. I'm just kind of laying there. But it's almost like I'm a captive audience, and he's reaching in and working as I'm laying there with nothing I can really do, eventually I get let out a little bit early, and I really had no concept of time. I called the job that I came up here to take, and they told me that they had since had to let somebody else have it because it's been 8 months. And I was like, what do you mean it's been 8 months? I've been laying in bed for 8 months. So they started getting worried about me bleeding, because that's another one of the side effects, is that you will contract bleeds through your esophagus or your stomach or your liver. And so I ended up with them in my liver. And I won't go into gory detail, but the first one, I mean, I lost a crazy amount of blood, and I was immediately in the ICU, put on blood transfusion. They ended up having to do surgery, and they got it to stop. But then it started again a couple of days later. About 70% of the blood in my body was gone. My blood pressure was like in the 50s, 40s. And so the first time I knew something had happened, but it wasn't as clear. The second time I was in VTAC, I was essentially dead for about 26 minutes. They were scared to death to do surgery in the first place. It's such a tedious thing having liver disease that the head liver doctor was the only one that I could see. I couldn't go to a different hospital. I couldn't do anything like that. So I had to see Dr. Alba at St. Luke's. And she was just 100% sure pretty much that she was going to lose me that night. I woke up a couple days later. I knew something had happened, and I started to remember it. And I started to remember a dialogue, and it was simple. It was, do you want to go back, or do you want to stay? And I said, I've got to go back, because they have to know, that this isn't something that's just fun to talk about or nice or makes you feel good, but this is important. This is real. These things have real consequences, and you're real. And it was, not to get too much into the explanation, because it's pretty hard to explain. But I could see all the way around me. It was nuts, but it was a moment of incredible clarity too. The first thing I noticed was I didn't hurt anymore. And I never really did feel scared. In fact, I was grabbing the doctor, and I was like, what is going on? And she said, your body's going into shock. You're drowning and you're bleeding to death. I was like, okay, well, how do I stop this shock thing from happening? Because the other part of me was not in shock. So it just seemed absurd that I couldn't stop that. But so after going through surgeries for a couple of days, I came out of it, and they still were thinking there's no way. And all of my doctor kept saying was, oh, buddy, you're so sick. You're so sick. So he came and got me. And one of the first things I did when I was able to go back to the house was, give thanks. So I immediately, I became ordained. I started studying, and the more I started reading the Bible, the more I thought, I know this stuff already. Over the last year, it was like I was getting a download, like getting brought in, being shown the truth, shown these things without having to do much of seeking initially. I started reading the Bible, and it was King James Version, which I found out later is hard for people to read, but I didn't really see it that way. And I started going to church, and I volunteered right when I got there. I want to teach a Bible study class. It's like, man, you just picked up a Bible. And I was like, I'm ready, So I started teaching a Bible study class and started ministering to the prisoners, just doing whatever I could for the church. But I've just been in and out of the hospital once or twice a month. And I'm also going to Christian Leaders College, working on my degree in divinity. But the one thing I will say is he came and got me. And it was amazing then, and it still is amazing now as it was then and every day. I'm not just thankful for the day, I'm thankful for the opportunity to learn as much as I can, to understand as much as I can, and to try to help other people. I finally just threw the keys up in the air and went, okay, whatever your will is, that's what we're doing.
The Unfolding is a Wow God production, a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com.